Sports.
Welcome back to Bite Size Sports. It's a supersized episode. I am so thankful. I never thought I'd say this, to say I'm thankful that someone is sick, but sickness has allowed the great Nate to join us. And also, we have a special guest today from the Batflip podcast and also of the famous Bite Size Sport number 99 car. We have David Westergreen. Hey, David, how you doing? I'm going to introduce you first because Nate can suck it.
I'm good. You know, it's maybe not the season we wanted out of that sponsorship, but I always really appreciate having some support and some people who believe in me, even if I don't always get it done. But I'm happy to finally get on and provide the collab. You know, we've been talking about it for a couple of months now, so it's good. I'm excited to break into some of this stuff, and it should be a fun episode.
Yeah, same. I am excited. It's been months, and it took Nate being in quarantine for it to happen. Nate, how are you feeling? Okay, buddy?
I mean, I feel fine today. I still, obviously, you can kind of tell I've got some congestion and fun stuff, but, it's not so bad. And then I got, obviously, as you all can tell in the background, a little company that may or may not be a little annoying during this, but we'll see.
The fourth guest.
The fourth and fifth guest.
Yep. The sixth
okay.
guest is on her tree, so.
Producer credits all around. So I think, it's a great place to start would be with this beautiful specimen right here. We have plenty more photos to go around, but it's David, this is how you and I met, at least through Nate. I would say Nate is definitely the conduit here. But, we met through iRacing, and we've been blessed to sponsor you. It's been a lot of fun to watch. So my first question, I guess, for you would be, like, how did you get into iRacing?
That's a really good question, actually. I think it pulls us way back, because I've met Nate. We went to Nashville last year, the Nashville Super Speedway NASCAR race together. So, Nate and I have been kind of friends on Twitter for a really long time. And, I had been at some point a couple of years back, I tweeted about sponsorship, and Nate mentioned he knew some guys and that might be interested in putting their logo on a car. And that's kind of how that came together. But man, I think my interest in iRacing comes from my interest in like motorsports in general, because my first race was the 2001 Daytona 500 that I ever watched, that I can recall watching. So like I'm watching this, and I don't know if you've ever gone back and watched that race, because a lot of people will shy away from it because of the last lap, but it was one of the best pure races I've ever seen. And even going back on it, the package that they ran was this almost like the 2021 NASCAR package with the big spoiler, the big runs. They had this bar across the top that was like creating these massive runs, and the packs were stayed up 2 and 3 wide, and that was on old bumpy Daytona too.
Mm-hmm.
The whole race, and it was just it's a spectacular race. They're constantly jockeying for the lead and stuff, and obviously the last lap takes kind of precedent on that, but that race hooked me on that, and I was watching every race from then on. So that was 2001. So I've been watching NASCAR for 21 years, and 2018, I think I had a job, and I was kind of finally out of college and everything. And I was like, you know what? I want to do, some iRacing. I've seen some YouTube videos on it. I want to get involved. So I bought a wheel, and I bought a wheel, and we got on it, and we started racing it. And I didn't get into like league racing for a little bit, but I had a buddy, it's Brent Jones, that I had met on Twitter from like NASCAR Twitter, and he ran in some leagues. So he introduced me, gave me a car, painted up some sponsorship and some paint schemes. And it was really addicting to go in and kind of have that set schedule for something to compete for each week. And it's been a minute of not necessarily having a lot of success, because I don't know, I started late. I haven't been doing it a whole lot, and I'm older than a lot of these little kids, but now it's, I won my last race that I ran on Friday. So it's like, it's just fun when I get a chance to compete. And obviously this season on Elite Racing, we had one race that we really competed, but a lot of them were just kind of a disaster from the start.
A lot of them look like that. through no fault of your own. I want to point that out. It got to be very frustrating to watch. I would always be so excited early on, and then you'd catch some bad luck there in the elite racing league. I have to take a second to point out, because I do think there's an interesting intersect here that I didn't realize until you started telling your story of when you got into NASCAR, because I believe our paths intersected on one fateful day. Because that Daytona, I believe, was that was the beginning of the end for me. I was a childhood NASCAR fan. I grew up in Terre Haute, Indiana, so I have very faint memories. My mother still has a child-sized T-shirt that was signed by Dale Earnhardt that is somewhere, like, encased in glass, I'm sure. But I grew up a fan of the sport, and my mother actually, she races motorcycles, or did. She's retired now at this point, but yeah. And then so I kind of faded away. I followed Dale Jr. for a little while and just sort of fell out of love with the sport over time. And it wasn't until this sponsorship opportunity and then Nate and I went to a road course at Mid-Ohio, and I have slowly over the last year kind of fallen back, maybe not in love yet, but I'm in a nice committed courtship with the sport of racing, and I'm very much enjoying it. So I just wanted to jump in there. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think you're right. I think NASCAR, but racing as a whole, I think is back on the upswing a little bit, which is really nice. And I'm looking for towards stuff that's like Drive to Survive. I've gotten into F1 recently because of that. They've allowed their drivers to be personalities and be really interesting characters to watch. And so even if it's Formula One racing, which isn't quite the same, the drivers are a lot more interesting. And I've always thought that NASCAR drivers were the most interesting. They were the ones that got in fights after the race and, were able to bounce off of each other and bang into each other, show their displeasure on the track. That's what really drew me to NASCAR at the beginning, was the colorful paint schemes and the personalities that were in the garage at that time. You had like Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., like all these really high octane guys. And then, even the lower class drivers, but really back then, those guys were all like anybody could win on any given Sunday. And we have not had that in, 15 years where you felt like there's legitimately 20 or 30 cars in the garage that could win a race.
Well,
it had really just been those couple of teams. And now I think we're back to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would 100% say, for the faults that this new car has, at least for NASCAR, as we can see, there's 19 different winners this year. A lot of different teams won. I mean, you had, excuse me, you had newer teams like Trackhouse and 2311 be very successful. So, for the faults that this car has in some regard, you're kind of getting back to that.
Yeah. There's definitely problems with this car, but, back when I think part of it too is that how many of these drivers have a big personality? I think of Ross Chastain, for better or for worse. I think of Bubba Wallace. And then, a lot of these guys are kind of vanilla. They don't really get angry. They don't really get in trouble, and then they're kind of easy to push around. It's kind of how it is. Kyle Busch is a big personality, right? But he has seemed very disinterested of late. And I'm hoping that this move back to RCR gets him a little more energized. Yeah. I think Ty Gibbs coming up is good for the sport because you need somebody to hate, and you need somebody who's going to go out there and draw those boos and draw that interest. Ty Gibbs is going to be just so easy to hate. But, I want him to fire up the other guys. These guys, heard Denny Hamlin talk about like, oh, I owe Ross Chastain one and all season long. And other than Gateway, man, he didn't do anything about it. Like, it's all these guys they're just very, very vanilla now.
He also fucked him over at Pocono too. I want to add that, but pretty much, it's all talk, no bite sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that though. As a growing up a wrestling fan, I love you need a good heel. Like I we all love to hate the Yankees in the late '90s. I thought, for instance, I was much more interested in the UFC when Conor McGregor was around, and I just couldn't wait to see him get his ass kicked. And then now that it's happened a couple of times, I'm less interested. But I believe in that. It's easier to watch because you can't always bank on your guys being good, but you can. It's nice to know that there's at least someone that you hate. Like, we could all agree that we didn't want to see Tom Brady win in the playoffs, which almost made it must-watch TV. You wanted to be there to see them get their due. So I think, it's great if you have a couple of assholes, for lack of a better term, that are going to come up and stir things up. I think that's always great for these individual sports.
And you're always going to have your like side of the argument too, right? You've got your heel that everybody hates, which is kind of, it's Ben Logano, it's going to be Ty Gibbs. It's been Kyle Busch before. Everybody's going to hate that guy. And it's going to be that universal, we all love to hate this guy. Right. I think that's the difference between Ross Chastain and like a Ty Gibbs, is that Ross Chastain is going to be really divisive. His style of driving is aggressive. He's unapologetically aggressive, but he's also he's got the watermelon smash. He's got just exciting things about him. He's got the Martinsville wall ride now. He's very easy to root for. He's a guy that had to earn his stripes. He drove the 15 car, for crying out loud, for Rick Ware Racing. Like, he's come up to be a championship threat. He was second in the championship this year. And it's the kind of thing that this sport has really missed, I think, over the past several years, where a good rivalry and, some guys that are really, Tony Stewart would go out and just punch the guy who didn't do well. Jimmy Spencer would go out and just, he never won a freaking race, but he would still, act like he owned the world. Like Dale Jarrett, Ricky Rudd, like those guys managed the garage, and they could manage to, they could create those rivalries. You wanted to beat those guys. You wanted to see those guys lose if you didn't like them. And if you were a Yates fan, you wanted to see him win. So I'm just frustrated that, it hasn't been that in a while. And a lot of the personality in the garages gets pushed down, because like Bubba Wallace is one of the biggest personalities, but every time he shows some emotion, half the garage, or half the fan base just jumps down his throat and hates on him. And it's just, I don't think that's based in anything. If he was a different skin color, you'd see a different response, I think.
And I don't even think it's necessarily the skin color thing, more so the fact that, he made NASCAR, which, they did their own decision, ban my Confederate flag or whatever.
Yeah.
About. Or the thing with the noose in the garage, that kind of always seems to be brought up or played out every time, something he does happens. And then especially, with the incident at Las Vegas with Larson, which inexcusable. But it blew up way more than it did, just based on past history of actions and things that have happened to Bubba. So, and you just don't see that anywhere else. And, I don't think he's toned down necessarily some things just because of that. But, for the most part, though, like David said, there's not a lot of, out there open personality. I kind of wish, for an example, that, Blaney still raced for the Wood brothers, because that was just like a perfect pairing right there. And while, he is successful at Penske Racing, Roger just has a certain, I'm just going to say, like, business-like way of going about things. The beginning of the year, this may seem silly, but he's always got to have like a fresh haircut, clean shaven sort of thing. They got that same like 1950s business sort of look, and that's
like
what
the Yankees rules.
Yeah. That's actually that's a good one right there. No beards or anything like that.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that rule for the Yankees. And you're right. Blaney, when he had the long hair and the sunglasses, he felt very much like a personality. I want Blaney to get pissed off, man. After a season like that, didn't win a race, got shoved out of the way of the Daytona 500 by his teammate, was the quintessential teammate to help Logano win the championship at the end, but he didn't even make the owners playoffs with the 12 car. Like,
nope.
he's got to get mad and he's got to take some wins. And if Blaney starts getting mad and taking some wins, I think his fan base will grow so immensely, because he's the kind of guy who could get under the skin of a Chase Elliott and get Chase Elliott to show some emotion, because Chase Elliott's just he's a brick. I mean, and everybody loves him because of his last name, but like he doesn't do anything. He's very, very calm and quiet, and even when he gets mad, like it's just I don't know. He's very much he's not the guy that NASCAR needs right now, and he needs somebody up there to battle with him. And he and Larson have had some goings on, but Hendrick always snuffs those out. And
I mean, he's had a one or two kind of neat one-liner sort of things. I mean, he had the was it Happy Christmas and Merry Offseason comment, after he was wrecked by Harvick, but then, he basically psyched Harvick out at the Roval, I want to say last year.
Yeah, it was last year,
yeah. And then obviously when he got wrecked at the first race after the pandemic came back, or the second one, excuse me, and just flipping the bird to Kyle Busch. He's got a couple moments, but, otherwise he's pretty dry.
Right. What do y'all think about Noah Gragson? Because he's got a signature victory celebration, right? He's got some major heel attitude, and he's very much like a trash talker. But he's also like, he won 8 races last year at the Xfinity Series, and I can see him being a heel that could get into the skin of some guys once he comes up here and he starts running with GMS, and he's got Jimmy Johnson in his corner now. So I don't know. I kind of like that Gragson's going to come up, and maybe he might be one of those guys that could do this.
I mean, I can't stand him, and
good. Exactly.
Well, he's good in terms of a heel, but the problem is he's also got some questionable history in terms of catcalling on Snapchat of women on the street. I don't know that this incident matters as much, where he tried to kiss when he won the Snowball Derby. He tried to kiss the trophy girl, and she kind of was like, nah about it. But the funny thing is, she went as his date to the some event 3 weeks later. So I don't know how much that one really qualifies. But I mean,
yeah, it sounds like he didn't offend her too much. But
yeah,
I wouldn't suggest it. I wouldn't say, hey guys, this is a good beat. You should do this. You should definitely do this. But it sounds like she was okay with it. I don't know, Nate. This sounds perfect to me. You've got a veteran of the sport in your corner, so to speak. You've got a guy with a history of some wins that it's clearly can rub people the wrong way. I think so long as that's the end of it, and as long as nothing gets any worse, so maybe somebody should talk to him about hey, you should be careful in the modern day when it comes to how you interact with the ladies. You should just be better safe than sorry. But I don't know. I like this. Sounds like we've got an upcoming heel, which I'm a huge fan of, and because that leads me to a question I had for the two of you. Because as a newer fan, whose sole experience right now at these racers is one Truck Series race, so because of Nate, I like Parker Kligerman, and then I played NASCAR Heat 4 and 5, so I have some people who always tweet very mean things to me because they don't like the way I race, but I don't know if I should hold that against them in real life. So what do you guys think, David? Any suggestions for me for who I should start rooting for next year?
Well, okay, so I had a favorite driver from that first race. Ward Burton led the most laps, right? And you'll see my car there. I'd like to run this cat car. It's just my favorite car because it caught my eye back in those early races. It was easy to find in the pack, right? You've got the yellow, the black. It's just red numbers. It's just really, really perfect for looking through a pack of cars and finding it and seeing it. And I always looked for it. And I kind of transferred from Ward Burton to Casey Kane there for a little while. And I like the Dodge boys. I love watching a Dodge car. Those were the best bodies on these cars. But, once Kane kind of retired and won his last race, that Brickyard 400, and won his last race, I was like, I don't know if I can handle doing specifically a driver, because there's just so many drivers now. And I like Ross Chastain. I like Bubba Wallace. They're the ones I've talked about the most already. Blaney, I like those guys, but I like to watch the field and watch for chaos and watch for, the underdogs. So I just would collectively say, if you're going to choose anything, root for those guys who don't have all the opportunity, don't win all the races, because when they do pull up and win a race, it's so much more fun to celebrate that than it is to, see a guy win his 10th race of the season.
Okay. Yeah, I feel I respect that. Yeah, as someone who lives in Columbus, Ohio, I absolutely can relate to getting annoyed by being around certain types of success constantly. It's like, yeah, hey, I don't mind seeing you lose every once in a while. Kind of refreshing. Nate, what about you? I know you probably have. Well, I know there's one person I will never root for, and that is Kyle Busch. Fuck Kyle Busch. I've been waiting to say it. I don't really know why I hate Kyle Busch. I just know that I'm supposed to. The internet has taught me that much. And we had a very passionate fan explain it to his girlfriend in front of us, Nate, at Mid Ohio. I have those notes somewhere. Sorry, they're not handy, but. I know that he likes to blame his car for everything, right? That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's always the car, never his fault. But anyway, so it's not Kyle Busch, Nate. Who should it be?
Before I say that, I'll just say to David, have you ever seen the was it Channel 5 or All Gas No Brakes video where they went to Talladega on YouTube?
I haven't.
Oh, you
We'll send
just
you the
watch
link.
it.
Yeah, send it to me.
Everyone at
Okay.
home watch that as well. Yeah, they're going to be a couple of one-liners that stick with you. But yeah, go ahead, Nate. My bad.
But yeah, so obviously I'm a fan of Bubba and then Blaney, but being from Terre Haute, you could root for a kind of a Southern Indiana, racer. I mean, I'm wearing the hat right now for Chase Briscoe.
Briscoe, yeah, he'd be a good one actually. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's not one in terms of like that came up with money. I mean, he's got a racing background, just with his dad being a pretty successful sprint car racer around the Midwest, and his grandpa was a pretty legendary sprint car owner, and even Steve Kinzer, who was probably the goat of sprint car racing, raced for him briefly. I think it was like one race or something, but that there's kind of a local connection there for me. Just the fact that I lived in Bloomington for a while, and weirdly enough, I worked with one of his relatives for a hot minute there. So it's just kind of nice to have some sort of personal connection there. So that's my number one there. Just I'd say maybe stay away from all the Gibbs.
Stay away from all the Gibbs.
That's funny.
I don't think
I
I'll have
would
a problem with that.
I would even say if you wanted to do a couple of guys, like we've both mentioned, we like Blaney, like Bubba. Well, there's a couple of guys I like, and I think that does also make it easier. You got a couple guys you can root for, and then you don't have the singular guy that if his success doesn't happen, then your just day is miserable, right?
Yeah,
I was at the 2007 Coca-Cola 600, sitting next to a Kyle Petty fan. At this point in 2007, Kyle Petty had not been running full time for years, and I could not have told you the last time I saw him run well. Kyle Petty that day, that man stood up and pointed for Kyle Petty to go by every single lap for 600 miles, and Kyle Petty went and finished third. And it was the best run of Kyle Petty since Adam Petty died. Like, I think that was
pretty much
his best run, right? So, if you're that guy, right, and your success and your day is dictated on Kyle Petty's race, well, you were often going to have a bad day. If you want to do a couple of guys, I think Ryan Preece is about to be Chase Briscoe's teammate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ryan Preece he's like a modified driver, right? He's been, he's kind of bided his time. He got hired by Stewart Haas Racing before last season, didn't get a ride, and is being put in the 41 car because Cole Custer wasn't getting it done. He's won some races. He's like made the most of his opportunities, a lot like Ross Chastain has. If you're going to jump on a bandwagon before it gets going, Ryan Preece might be the way to go. He may have some chance at some wins next year in that Stewart Haas car.
I like
And
that. I think I'm going to take that approach because I am a big underdog guy. I can't help myself when I see the situation. I often just for all the reasons you said, you just get more enjoyment out of it. It's a better story. It resonates more with people like me. But yeah, I think I do also like the idea of having a couple of guys with a vested interest in. I am someone like fantasy football that has helped me get more interested in games I don't care about. Is okay. I actually have some reasons to be rooting for this particular individual or that. So I think I'm gonna take. I've been taking some notes here. I got some names that I'm gonna start looking at, and I'm glad I didn't base it off my NASCAR Heat tweets because those guys are not cool.
yeah, and I mean, you were all about when we were at Mid Ohio. You were all about Taylor Gray.
That's right. That's right. Gonna get that back in there.
I would, yeah. Go jump on the underdogs of the Xfinity and trucks are also really, really enjoyable to watch. Like Timmy Hill will always
Mm-hmm.
be watchable in trucks. He's got his own truck team. They have like one car that he just brings to every race and then just runs top 20 with it every time. Then you've got like the Tommy Joe Martins is a really good dude, and he's actually building a decent little team in the Xfinity series. He's got Sage Karam, they've got Roger Caruth, got just a bunch of good guys on that team. They're always easy to root for, and they're underdogs for sure. But even before his whole before his whole thing with the Let's Go Brandon stuff, Brandon Brown was always really easy to root for, and yeah, I mean that was not his fault. And he went and won himself a race. So
I mean, some of the aftermath, he didn't handle it necessarily right. But I will say, so I was at that race, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't really at all. And then when I was walking down, the from the top of the grandstand and stuff, I didn't really hear it whatsoever. So it's just interesting how that all blew up there. But yeah, the fact that he, I felt bad for him, but then he decided to, I don't know if he actually got money from it, but they made a Let's Go Brandon crypto coin, so shit coin, basically. And they were going to sponsor him and supposedly got approved, but then didn't get approved, sort of thing. So it kind of hurt him in the end. That win actually probably screwed his career more than helping it, to be honest.
Yeah, crypto coins can, especially the wrong kind, can really do some damage with your audience, especially if it's your audience or the ones that you were able to convince to invest in the coin, and then it goes bad. Like you've just lost a lot of people that were really big supporters. So that's a slippery slope, and unfortunately, well, I think a lot of people. I've seen some stuff now with that. I'm no expert there, but I know that I'm not buying into any endorsed athlete or whatever, any sponsored cryptos at this point. But so we talked a lot about NASCAR. I don't want to move on if there's other things that you guys want to talk about, but I thought while we were here, I know Nate and I have both kicked around the idea of doing some iRacing in the future. I am far too bad at it, is what I've learned. I'm not even like, I have to get better at playing it as a video game before I could ever even try it. I still need a wheel, but I don't know where you're at with it, Nate, but I figured it could be if there was any tips for someone, because I see these sponsorships all the time that iRacing League is offering discounts on memberships, so it seems like they're really making a push to kind of join. So David, would you have any tips, any advice for someone, a scrub like me, who wants to give it a try?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about. First thing would be it's kind of pay to win. To some extent, the more money you spend at the beginning on a good monitor, on a setup, on your chair, on the wheel, especially the wheel, and the pedals, that translates pretty heftily. I tried to skimp on it at the beginning. I got the cheapest wheel. I played on a laptop. That will not help you. So the best thing is have some money would be the first thing, because if you've got a good wheel, if you've got a good monitor, if you can build yourself like a racing setup, all of those types of things are going to help you out with that immersion and with the the feeling of being behind the wheel. At the end of the day, I bought a better wheel and I sit on it. I sit in a folding chair. I don't always have the best feel for it, but the other thing would be just my suggestion, and it's not necessarily the way I think to join and have success, is to just try to keep it clean. And if you try to just stay clean, stay out of everybody's way, and make laps, turn laps, and get that experience, you'll find yourself competing. It's going to take time, and you're going to have to be patient. The other thing would be to join a team where people can help you. If you've got some help in your corner, it's so much easier to get better. Once I actually started racing with some guys who are really skilled, and I swear, dude, I've wound up racing in leagues with just these guys who are amazing at iRacing and could
Not the Monday night one.
No, there's a lot of really talented guys in that league, and that's what makes it disappointing when I get caught up in those wrecks, because I feel like that league is really, really talented. There's a lot of I just tooting some horns. Tate Lytle, Tyler Fody, who was my teammate. Those guys. I feel like Tate Lytle runs in the college series. You've got we're running with RC Anderson, who's qualified for the Indy 500 before. David Schildhaus is working for our Alpha Prime Racing. He runs in that league. Sage Karam's running that league. There's just a bunch
Kyle
of
Busch running that.
we've run with Kyle Busch. We've run with Dale Jr. There's a lot of talent there, and those guys like Tyler Fody. Jeff Green runs in that league all the time. The 2000 Xfinity champ. So, and then the guy who paints our car, Michael Goodman. I think he's got the second or third most races run in Elite. He's a really good dude, and he's kind of like that's the kind of group he doesn't win. He's never won an elite race, but Goodman shows up every week, runs, he does well, he's clean. I love racing against him, and those are the types of guys that I was expecting to join with. Where I could race. I've raced with Goody. Me and him, we'll fight for position all the time, but we end up running 25th in that league because it's so talented and there's so much going on. If you can find a league where your skill level is sitting right in the middle, 15th, and you can run for 15th and try to challenge for those top 10s, you can easily start finding yourself challenging for the top 5s and start winning races. And it's about going into a league where you can find that success. I would say it's not about just being aggressive and running over people and making enemies and stuff like that. And I find that that's where I would say a lot of the problems I've run into are people go in and they're like, well, I'm new to this league, let's just run over everyone. And that's not my favorite way to race. That's for sure.
It sounds like I'm going to have a better time getting integrated than Nate would, because I don't know, David, if you've had the pleasure of racing against Nate in a video game, but he is much more aggressive. Now, I made jokes earlier for comedic effect, but I'm actually a very clean driver in NASCAR heat because I don't really know what I'm doing, so my whole thing is to try to watch the guys in front of me and try to learn the best routes on the track and all that stuff. But Nate will just knock me out. He'll just wait, 3 or 4 laps into it. He'll be like, all right, Kev, time to go. He's already lapped me once, and then he has to come back around and make sure I can't finish the race either. So, Nate, what are you thinking about, man? Are you going to make the jump? Are you going to take the dive and do some iRacing anytime soon? Or are you just going to keep beating up on your friends in Xbox Live?
Well, I need a different laptop or a computer and get a wheel and stuff, but it'd be fun. Just the fact it would be enjoyable to do like crazy events, like running IndyCar at like Bristol or Martinsville or something, or that would it would be interesting. I would love for it to happen in real life, but that's probably not going to ever happen. But it would be really interesting to see like Indy cars at Bristol, just how fast that they would be going and how much of a shit show it would be. But the opportunity to do stuff like, running cars where you normally can't run them, or normally where they won't run them, that'd be fun to do, but I'm not that close to getting that done and taken care of.
I would say having been doing this for a while, I've done a bunch of stuff that's you're not supposed to do it, right? We've run like Xfinity cars on dirt. We've run um we've run on like the F1 tracks with the NASCAR cars. Like I'm pretty much a NASCAR guy, but you can do a lot of those things and there's a lot of like open stuff. There's F1 cars on there's IndyCar, there's dirt cars, like all kinds of good stuff with it. So it's not just a NASCAR game, and I want to point that out. But I'm just a NASCAR guy, so I like sticking with my roots and the stuff that I know how to do, which is all turning left. So
Yeah, I used to be a guy who talked down, Nate can attest to this, at how boring it was to just watch people turn left. And then I started doing it virtually. And once you start to actually get even somewhat familiar with the skill and the timing and what you're trying to do, it's I find it funny that I've come full circle on this, where it's like, okay, now I, on a long weekend night, if I need to decompress, I'll hop on and just turn left for a couple hours and just love every minute of it. Where I used to think how could anyone enjoy this? This is so boring. Everyone's just making left turns. But I do. And then plus road course racing is freaking hard, man, and I suck at it. So I'd much rather watch that live at Mid-Ohio with Nate like we will next year. So
nice.
Well, it's a pretty big day in college football, and I think we're all kind of sad about some of the outcomes here, but it's the playoff picture. There's currently is the Big 12 game still going on right now?
Yeah, they're in overtime. So TCU had the ball first in overtime, and they got down to the one, and then on 3rd and goal, Kansas State stopped them. But if you watch the replay, the ball broke the plane. But nobody even tried to review the play at all, and then they got stopped on 4th down. So they basically got screwed out of a touchdown. So now all Kansas State has to do is score to win. But
oh my god,
yeah, like they didn't even review it or anything, and it was pretty clear that he scored. If you look at the overhead view, so
wow!
But your boys up, at the Michigan border took care of business.
They did?
The Toledo Rockets, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. MAC champions, huh? Is that a thing?
MAC champions.
Hey.
Put them in the playoff.
Pretty soon that's what we'll have, right? It's going to be I heard that before we dive into it, this little fun experiment, or at least I thought it was. Someone pitched the other day, and I tweaked a little bit of this. Let's just do like a 6-game regular season and then field of 64 this bad boy. Let's just do maybe not every year, but I'm thinking once a decade we just replace the college football season entirely and we just say let's just tournament this thing from the beginning. But what is it going to be, Nate? 12? Is that when?
Yep.
When is 2 years? How far away are we from that? I'm sorry.
2024.
Oh.
So this year and then next year, the last two of this 14 playoff and then 12-team playoff. But honestly, I hate the playoff.
I know it.
So basically, this is now pretty much just NFL light, in my opinion. I mean, what's the point in watching college football otherwise? I mean, pretty much everything that made college football special, minus not playing players, which should have been happening to begin with for a while. I mean, it's all getting destroyed and ruined. I mean, when you got shit like USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, like, what the fuck? Seriously.
My favorite place is in the Midwest or California, so it's my favorite part. I love the fall weather. You get all 4 seasons in Southern LA. David, you're a Clemson fan, right? How do you feel, I guess, about the playoffs in general? And then a second question: do you share Nate's sentiment of a hatred for these new mega conferences that are coming?
I got thoughts. Right, I agree with Nate on the mega conferences, but I disagree on the playoff for very specific reasons. It's so, first off, the mega conference thing, I mean, Rutgers is in New Jersey. I mean, they're not in the Midwest either. So, I mean, we should have been whining about these locations way
Don't
before
even
now.
get me started on Butgers.
Nate might have been also like I've heard Nate like their listeners are like, oh my god, here goes Nate about the freaking death of college football again. This is like once a year now. But yes, no, Rutgers. I was poo pooing Notre Dame as a Notre Dame fan being in the ACC. It's like, why do you keep avoiding the Big Ten, guys? Like, just anyway. But sorry, go ahead, David.
Look, I would. Okay, so and then my thing is, all right. So you mentioned paying players, which yes, they should be doing, and the NIL looks really good. But there's a few problems with it, and I think those problems are going to get ironed out as we go. Here's the problem, right? Is if as you're creating this paid environment for college football, you've got two issues that are cropping up that are going to continue. It's one, players are going to take the money. They're going to take the money and switch teams. The transfer portal is a little too chaotic right now. The issue being that I think you need contracts, multi-year contracts, the same as sports, right? You can just do 1 to 4 year contracts, and that can allow you to be like understanding of what your team needs, because you don't want to have to go into the off season with you're like, oh, we got this quarterback, and now the quarterback leaves all of a sudden. You know what I mean? That's a problem. The second problem is that when you're creating this scenario, you're going to create more teams that are better because the players who perform well on those little teams, like think of like the superstars who played on the MAC teams or the other teams, those players are now able to transfer to the big teams and challenge for the championship. So more teams going for the championship does make sense because you've already got this 4-team nonsense. This year, you did the 4 were clear, right? TCU just lost. The championship 2 were clear. A BCS championship this season, obvious. And it's been just about every year that the playoff games have felt completely unnecessary. Some team has blown out the other team, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the most part, you didn't need the playoff. Now that we're going to have it, the difference between 4 and 12 is negligible in my mind, right? I like 4 more than 12 probably, but it's still pay to win. You still have to, the Texas A&Ms are going to use their massive budget to go 6-6 again. It's just like when they're, and they need this to get into the playoff with it because they need help. They're never going to go 12-0. So, as much as I would prefer it to just stay the 4, stay the 2, it really should have just been the 2, but this is fine. It'll ultimately be okay. And with the paid players stuff, I think that they'll start kind of ironing out some more concrete rules for paying players that don't allow for so many transfers. And in theory, that will help things out a little bit. It's not necessarily, I don't want to restrict them, but I want the players to be signing those contracts for the school, like the NIL deal matches the school, and so the money comes from that, the school and the sponsorship and all that, for a given number of years, so that essentially it's like free agency, where we know when the player's contract is coming up when he comes out of high school. Like
that makes sense, yeah.
That's smarter, I think, than just having it be like, oh well, I'm transferring actually. Got a better offer from Alabama, so
yeah, because there are some of those NIL deals like Doug Edert. He transferred to Bryant, but his NIL deal was with Buffalo Wild Wings. So okay, if that's a personal brand, he gets to kind of take that with him, and the school's going to lose out. But then there are some of these other ones. There's a Nebraska player whose name escapes me, but a local HVAC company did an NIL deal with him basically because of his name, and that's a very that's specific.
Crawford.
What is it?
The coldest Crawford.
Thank you. God. Yeah, the coldest Crawford. So imagine if he goes to South Florida, right? Like that money that the company has agreed to pay him is now worthless. If they gave him his money up front and they weren't able to. Maybe they only got the one commercial out of it. So I think a lot of this, like businesses are going to get smarter with this too, if they're not already, and protecting their interests up front and being a little more ironclad in these contracts. It's like, hey, this NIL deal, you need to be here in order for me to keep paying you. So I think that too could start to limit some of the chaos with the transfer portal, where kids are going to have to start making these same adult decisions. You use free agency. I think that's a good kind of comparison, where a guy's he's gonna have to choose. You know, he'll still have those options, right? But now he may have to choose this money that I've agreed to take or a better opportunity to go play for a better school, because I'm not going to get to keep both. I think right now you got a lot of kids that are able to keep both, and they're just running rampant and just kind of hopping from school to school. But as far as that goes, as long as the coaches are able to quit 6 games in and start somewhere else, then I am all about the kids being able to transfer really to their heart's content. But the NIL deal does make it sticky.
You're absolutely right. That's big. That's big on the issues, is that we've never maligned the coaches for leaving, or we literally just saw what Mario Cristobal, Brian Kelly, who was the other? Oh, Lincoln Riley, and kind of Hugh Freeze, but he was less. It was more those guys who left in the middle of the night, just that were not. No one was expecting him to leave. The day before in a press conference, they said, I'm not leaving. And the next day, they're on a plane to the next place with the deal intact. So it's stuff like that makes me less worried about the players doing this, right? It's totally fine because the coaches are going to do it. So why can't the players do it?
Don't forget about the fake Southern accents too.
Oh my God.
I ain't even won all my games yet. God, I'd love to hate that man.
One of our good friend Adam, who runs our fantasy baseball league. He's a Notre Dame fan, and we've talked about this a number of times. I swear, the Notre Dame has gone from a situation of being stuck under Brian Kelly, where you can't fire him, but you can't keep him, to they got so lucky here. I think Marcus Freeman is going to put Notre Dame in so much a better position that they're going to be contenders going forward because of this. Like he's already recruited better than Kelly ever did. They're already looking into big transfers on the portal. They've used their offense really well. They figure out what works and they win with it. Like, just look at that Clemson game. They ran the ball because it worked. They only threw like 10 times in the whole game. So,
which is big. That was big for Tommy Rees too. That was big of him to see some of that maturation. And I agree with you as a bias. Well, I can't say really I'm a biased Notre Dame fan. I'm the pessimistic fan who hates my team. Like even when we do well, I'm always like, yeah, but it could have been better. But I agree with everything you just said, David. I've been, for one, I never really liked the way Brian Kelly got to Notre Dame. We just talked about that a little bit. And after a while, it got to be pretty obvious to me that he wasn't going to be any sort of transcendent coach, and that we were going to be 8-4 a lot and win the bowl games that don't matter and get stomped in the ones that do. And I thought it was the best case scenario, because I thought at that time the Notre Dame coaching staff had a great defensive coordinator in Freeman, great offensive coordinator in Rees. If Kelly was going to leave and take his staff with him, that would have been a disaster. But the whole staff, and I think that speaks volumes too, most of the staff wanted to stay. And I do think that, yeah, they have a good coach. And then the fact, I expected the recruiting to take a little bit longer. So the fact that they're already having some transfers come in and that he's actually doing – because I thought maybe Brian Kelly's best skill is just selling people on the fact that he brings something to the table, because I thought at the very least he had to be a good recruiter, right? Like, what has he been here for? Like, he has to be doing something. He's clearly not – scheming things, but so I'm very happy with their future despite the loss to Marshall and all that good stuff. But Nate, I know it's the end of your life really as a college football fan, as IU is going to get probably fewer and fewer Big Ten title runs with USC and UCLA coming in the mix.
What title runs to begin with?
Yeah, I tried to be nice.
The last one was I'd have to look it up.
It was 2020. They went 9-3 or something like that, right?
6-1, but we lost to Ohio State.
Oh, well, listen. Does Michael Penix having a ton of success in Washington irritate you at all?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't know exactly, the details behind him transferring, but no, it doesn't. And they've only won the Big Ten title twice, 45 and 67. So,
Good Lord.
I've never seen one in my lifetime.
We can make room for you in the MAC. I'd love a yearly rivalry with you. You know,
You know what? You know what's funny though is their all-time record winning percentage is 420. So
There you go.
Boom.
Gotta
Yeah.
find those bright sides.
You got that going for you. So, is the ink dry yet on the Big 12 championship? Because I'd
Yep.
like to start. Is it okay? So it's final now. Did TCU lose?
They did.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I don't. I still, I had the game kind of like on the background here. I still don't, know why they didn't review the third down play for TCU, and they basically got screwed. Um, but I'm going to be so. I mean, I think we touched on this briefly when we were off the air, but I'm going to be so pissed if the committee ends up sliding in Alabama there. That's just going to be complete bullshit, personally. I mean, unless Texas is in the top, I mean, I don't.
They are, I think.
Okay. So I'd have to look.
But TCU beat Texas by more than Alabama beat Texas. So Alabama almost lost to Texas.
It's so murky right now. David, who are your four right now that are in?
Well, I thought that regardless of the results today, that Michigan, Georgia, and TCU were in.
Okay.
I think that Ohio State takes the place of USC after last night. But I wouldn't argue if you really wanted to put see, and here's the thing, right? Is you look at Ohio State, they played nobody, they got Notre Dame essentially as their best win. They lost in a blowout to Michigan. I don't really see the point of putting them in, essentially, because you just don't want to have to get this rematch of Michigan and Ohio State in a neutral field. I wouldn't want that necessarily. It looked like Michigan just had their number.
Yeah.
But who are you going to put in? Like Tennessee, they're down Hendon Hooker. They're never going to put them in. They didn't even rank Tennessee over Bama, despite them playing, against each other already this season, with the same number of losses. You have like Utah, I guess, is a Pac-12 champion maybe, but they're just not there. So it has to be Ohio State essentially.
I was going to say, so Ohio State has a better win than Alabama, in my opinion. Because I would say, just looking at this, Alabama's best win is Mississippi State.
Wow.
Honestly.
Wow.
Oh God.
Ohio
It's
State.
Ole Miss. Is it not Ole Miss? Is it? Yeah, it's one of those.
Ole Miss lost 3 in a row to end the year, and Mississippi State won the head-to-head.
Oh yeah.
I would put Mississippi State above them.
Jeez, the Mike Leaches.
That explains it. There it is. The Fighting Mike Leaches. That or they've been sneaking Dak Prescott back onto the field.
And Ohio State beat Penn State by 13 at Penn State. So, that
game was real close too.
It was.
But Ohio State also barely beat Northwestern. You have some of those games on there too that I think you can't ignore.
That's true, but
that was a wind game, though.
Yes, that is fair. It's very valid to point that out. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of agree with you here, David. I feel like Ohio State is gonna end up back in it. And on the one hand, it's a question I don't think we need answered. But again, as a bit of a petty person who lives in Columbus, Ohio, I won't be too mad if I get to watch everybody just cry about it one more time. Like, just it'll almost be, oh man, yeah, it'll be kind of poetic to me to have that happen if that's the way it goes down. But I also will get the hell out of town for that weekend. I don't want to be here. I'll come back Monday and enjoy everyone's week-long hangover. But yeah, I don't know. What about you, Nate? Who are your four right now if you had the vote?
Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Even if they were to lose to Purdue somehow, I'm still, I think Michigan's a lock.
The spoiler makers.
The spoiler makers, yes.
I can't. You gotta be careful about that, man. Purdue's the kind of team that just accidentally is their way into a really competitive game with Michigan today.
Well, there's no kid with cancer that they have to play a game with, so I don't know that they're gonna have that voodoo magic.
They're not. They don't have a lot of hope on the ESPN predictions. They're giving them like 11% odds, but it could be a team of destiny. It would certainly fit the year, wouldn't it? If Purdue came out here and just said, "Wait a minute, you guys thought you had some of this settled." Would Michigan stay in, Nate? Is that what you're saying? Even if Purdue wins, you think Michigan's still
I
top
think
4?
so, and this will make David happy, but I'd much rather see fucking Clemson than Alabama, because at least Clemson will most likely have won their conference.
Oh God, dude, we'll get into this, but they had every opportunity last week. They were up 14-0. Had every opportunity. They would be in right now. They would be in. No one would be having, if we had continued and blown out South Carolina, who just beat Tennessee. We up 14-0, could have done it. And you go in and you finish that game, and you go into this game and you win this game, either convincingly or close. I don't think it mattered. But if you had blown out South Carolina, who just blew out Tennessee, we would have been right back in at 4. I don't think there's any question about that. That being said, this team did not deserve to be in. They would have gotten destroyed by Georgia. Any team with a passing attack is going to give them trouble. They cannot figure out how to stop a quarterback that can throw the ball down the field. And guess what is North Carolina's biggest strength? Is a quarterback who throw the ball down the field. Sam Hartman killed us. Spencer Rattler killed us. I think Drake May is going to kill us. If they can't figure out how to get some offense going, which is the biggest weakness, I am significantly worried about this game tonight. And I think we win. We got North Carolina's number in the last couple of games we played against them, but if they can't score, it's not going to matter. And they've shown no signs of deciding to move on from DJ at quarterback, or at least to do something different with him at quarterback. And he was horrid last week. 8 for 29, I think, was the overall line there. So, and they were, after the game, they were like, well, it's not all his fault. And you're watching the game and you're like, he threw an interception on the last drive. Like, it's pretty much his fault. You can't
Sounds
go
like Colts fans, just a bunch of coping. Like, half those fumbles aren't Matt Ryan's fault. Well, I don't care how. First of all, yes, they are. All of them are his fault. But no, it's one of those things. It gets frustrating when you think it's time for a change, but people are still making excuses for it. So you're afraid of the ACC title matchup. I thought, until hearing you talk, David, I thought your boys were a lock for this, but you make some pretty good points. Nathan, Nate, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, I don't think North Carolina has much of a defense, and I could be wrong, but
their defense is okay. It is not special. It is not bad. It is a reasonably strong defense. But I have watched this team all year, man. they have played exactly down to all of their opponents all season long. They were in a 10-3 game against Boston College, who lost to UConn. So I just,
don't sleep on the Huskies this year. I don't say that. I mean, Jim Mora performing miracles in Storrs, Connecticut.
Gotta love a Mora.
And,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
He letting you go, Nate.
No, I was going to say, his dad's playoff rant would be still very appropriate for him.
Playoffs? That never gets old for me. Speaking of coaches and people we like to make fun of, there's at least one of them featured in this game, and I wouldn't mind watching LSU steal one again, just for the sake of pure chaos. But I think even at this point, Georgia's probably going in. But I don't know. Do you guys think there's a chance? Look at that line. That's why I wanted to bring this up. We don't have to talk about this game long because it doesn't feel like anyone thinks it's very close. But 17.5 for the SEC championship. I don't remember an SEC title game being this lopsided. But then again, I hate the SEC and I block a lot of that stuff out. So, David, yeah, right. Do you think this could be a close game at all? Should we bother watching this?
Well, I'm not going to watch it because SEC, but
exactly.
I think you might want to hammer the LSU in the points. I would think they can keep this close. Georgia is a very questionable team, because they have a game against Missouri that they won like last second on the docket this season. Like I think Georgia Tech punched them in the mouth last week and they responded, but Georgia Tech's also Georgia Tech. So I don't know if this Georgia team has really faced all that many challenges. You know, they blew out Oregon before Oregon got their feet underneath them this season, but Oregon was kind of a mid top 25 team instead of a championship contender. And we didn't really know that until the end of the year. So I just, I think Jaden Daniels is really good. I think LSU can probably hang with them. I think their defense is good enough to hold Georgia back from scoring a ton of points, but I figure Georgia will win, and I don't think it matters on the playoffs whether Georgia loses or not. I think there'll be 2 if they lose, there'll be 1 if they win.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not compelling because there's no stakes to this game. I think Georgia could lose this game by 30 and they would be in the playoff no matter what.
That's fair. I kind of agree with you there. Nate, what do you think? Do you agree with that sentiment? There's nothing Georgia could do to lose this game or to lose their shot in the playoffs?
I mean, they're in pretty much guaranteed, in my opinion. Just, as much chaos as there's been the past 2 days, I don't see anything happening where they can be overtaken. I mean, you certainly wouldn't put Alabama over them or anything like that.
Right.
And just, looking through the top 25, if I can see here real quick. I mean, you got a bunch of 3-loss teams bringing up the back end of the top 10 and, teams that aren't playing this weekend. How about this? If Tulane somehow wins today, just throw them in there.
Right. I would rather see them than Ohio State.
That was a perfect. I don't know if that was an intentional segue or not, Nate, but I was like, well, speaking of games that don't have any consequence to them, we have one more conference championship going today. So, yeah, UFC versus Tulane. I was shocked to see Tulane in this, but that just shows you how little I pay attention to the periphery, I guess, of college football. I'm going to pick Tulane just for old time's sake because they were one of my favorite squads to do rebuilds with in NCAA 11 through 13. So love me some green waves. What about you, David? You got a favorite in this one?
Man, so I've been loosely following UFC this season, or UCF this season, sorry. John Reese Plumlee is a really good running quarterback. And Isaiah Bowser is a Chicago legend, played in Northwestern for a while. He's their running back. So I think that Tulane's got the better team right now, but man, this is a close game that has already – Tulane did just beat UCF, so I think UCF may be out for revenge. I'd probably pick UCF in this game, but it's a close one, and I love these kinds of – the American is always a conference with some really, really underrated teams where we saw Cincinnati go into the playoff last year and, put up a good performance against Alabama. So I think if you really wanted to bury yourself in give me the most impressive team, and if Tulane goes out and blows out UCF in this game, you could talk me into giving them a spot up in the top 10, pretty high up there. I don't know that I could reason giving them Georgia because you're just feeding Tulane to the wolves at that point. So I would say Tulane's probably the better team, but UCF's good and they'll be out for revenge. So if you're betting it, consider that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would bet. I think the spread, at least it was at the time when I captured that screenshot, it was 3.5 to Tulane. So I would, if you're giving UCF 3.5 points, I'd be liking that bet. I think because I think it could be really close. And I agree with you on the sentiment. If Tulane does win, what a prize, right? You get to play Georgia. No thanks. Let us go to the Meineke Car Care Bowl or something. But Nate, you were about to say something. What was it?
So Tulane is up 7-0 right now, and they have the ball again.
They're coming for the playoff, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and LSU is kind of driving right now, just to kind of give a little updates here.
Yes,
Tulane
they even won.
Water.
Yeah, they smell that weakness. They're like, hey guys, things are about to be shaken up here. with LSU getting that win. So, well, that I think, I mean, we'll have, of course, something to say about all of this once it does shake out. But that was all that I had on the agenda for today. So, do you guys have any quick hitters, any hot topics that you wanted to go over while we were here? Nate, I'll start with you.
Not really anything else other than fuck the SEC.
Well, we can all agree with that. David, what about you? Any topics you wanted to hit while we were here?
Jacob DeGromm signed with the Rangers yesterday. Did y'all see that?
That's right.
Oh,
for
yeah, I
$100 million. What was actually the deal? It was 5 years, but what was the
5 years,
what was-
185 million. We'll be covering it on our episode of the Batflip podcast this upcoming week. But just for some preliminary thoughts, man, I wish the Cubs had made that deal. What a fantastic risk versus reward deal. I was sure that he was going to get 200 million plus, and I was thinking it was even going to be over fewer years. I thought you were going to see like a 4-year, $200 million deal. But you know, that's a lot. But when you're dropping it down to 37 million, that's a pretty reasonable price for an ace right now. It's not even the most anyone's paying for a singular starting pitcher. So, man, I think this is that's a missed opportunity for the Cubs. It's a missed opportunity for the Mets. And they're nervous about the years. They're nervous about having DeGromm at 39, but we're just watching Verlander win the Cy Young at 40.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's just a risk you have to take to get a guy like DeGromm on your team.
I agree, and with what we've seen, I know it's different arm mechanics and all that stuff, but we're seeing quarterbacks, we're seeing pitchers, we're seeing guys play longer and longer into their career. I think you just have to have some faith, and like you said, that the price is the price for a guy of that caliber. Nate, do you have some thoughts on this? And then a secondary question, a little bonus content, since we're all here, we're all Cubs fans. Is there anybody else that you'd like to see the Cubs go after this offseason? You got your eye on anybody?
So I personally, I mean, yeah, Verlander is doing well, and he is old as shit. But so I don't know. I'm okay with them not doing the DeGromm deal just because of DeGromm's injury history, and then the fact that it goes through age 39. I mean, it is a high risk, high reward sort of a contract, and shows that the Rangers are kind of being real about trying to compete. But in terms of anybody else I would like for the Cubs to go after, I don't know if I have anybody in specific mindset. To be honest with you, I haven't really been paying attention that much.
I got you.
I know, though, because I know David tweeted about it too, but I know that Brian Anderson requested a trade today. Reynolds, yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. So, that would be an interesting one, but I don't know that the Pirates are going to trade within the division, but who knows?
They've done it before. Aramis Ramirez. That's an old school. That's a throwback, but they've done it before.
Oh man, Aramis. Okay, so I've got a bit of a tidbit that came out today was that John Morosi tweeted that the Cubs are one of the teams showing active interest in Dansby Swanson. Dansby's easily the most volatile of all of the available free agent shortstops, and I think it's consensus among Cubs fans that we really want the Cubs to go get at least one of these free agent shortstops. Correa, Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson. Those were the four. They all had at least like 4 wins above replacement last year. All of them hit very, very, very well above average. And then you can move Nico Horner to second base. I'm ultimately fine with any of the 4, but we've seen the Cubs connected to Dansby a lot recently. And I like Dansby. I think he's got another gear potentially if you could get him to stop swinging and missing. He's got a really high strikeout rate. But what I really like about Dansby is that he plays really good defense. And so if you're going to get Dansby and you're going to give up your draft pick in that second round, you could go out and get a Chris Bassett, who is a contact manager guy whose contract is not expected to be super much. And we've seen these pitcher contracts be a ton right now. We saw Matthew Boyd get like $10 million, and he's not good last year. So if the Cubs are trying to figure out ways to get everybody together, right, they need to go get some offense. Swanson's a guy, but he can't be the only guy on your offense, and his value comes from his defense. So you have to go get more offensive guys. Well, Jose Abreu was like the first guy, and he just went to the Astros. Here's my ultimate plan. All right, it's get JD Martinez and give him the deal you were trying to give Jose Abreu. JD's a year removed from being really, really good. Last year he was solid, but I think there's still, if you dedicate him DHing and get him hitting in Wrigley Field, I feel like he could be very much a Nick Castellanos feeling guy where he could just be slamming doubles and balls into the basket. You get Dansby Swanson, and you get like Chris Bassett, and you have Swanson and Nico Horner up the middle, gobbling up those ground balls that Bassett and Marcus Stroman are rolling over. You pick up you do what they've been doing, which in the bullpen, they get like 2 or 3 older guys that they can just turn around like they did with David Robertson and Givens and Chris Martin last year. Chris Martin just made $18 million, by the way, so it's not going to be him. But like the Cubs, whoever the Cubs pick up, I trust them because Martin was so good. They got him on $3 million, and now he's making 18.
Yeah.
So I trust them completely in the bullpen. They need to pick up offense, and they need to get left-handed, and they need some defense in center field. So my plan is Cody Bellinger in center, JD Martinez at DH, Swanson, and Chris Bassett. That's my 4. I think they can do that for under. I think they're like $100 million to the first luxury tax. I think they can do that for under $100 million. That'd do it for me. That would make me feel good as a Cubs fan going into next year.
I like it. I don't have any counters yet. Nate, how do you feel about that?
Isn't Sean Manaea a free agent, or am I?
He is.
I know he had a rough year. Did not look good as a Padre, but I would be very excited if they somehow signed him for pretty cheap, which who knows if that would actually happen.
You could talk me into Sean Manaea. I'd ultimately prefer someone with a little more pedigree, especially if you're increasing infield defense with Dansby. You want someone who's going to get the ball on the ground. Manaea is more of a fly ball strikeout guy. So I like Manaea. If they want to get him, that's fine. I also like Taijuan Walker and Kodai Senga, the guys with big splitters that are available in this free agent class. You could definitely talk me into either one of them. Just say, we're going to get him to throw that splitter, 50% of the time. We want him burying it into the ground and getting easy ground ball outs all the time. Kyle Hendricks will be back next year. He'll be getting ground balls. Stroman's going to be getting ground balls. So, I think it's playing into your strengths by doing that, especially if you're getting Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I like the analysis. We'll have to come back and do another collaboration when the baseball season gets closer, because that is the one thing. It's a small team over here at Bite Size, and I get spread kind of thin with the NBA and the NFL, so I have to leave the MLB talk to the pros. So speaking of that, David, where can the good folks at home find you and your baseball talk?
All right, so I'm at DWest _3_ on Twitter. It's there on the screen for the YouTube, I bet. And then we've also got a podcast at the Batflip podcast. It'll be findable on iTunes, Spotify, all those. I talk with a Dodgers fan and a Braves fan about baseball, and it provides really good kind of overall league-wide baseball analysis. But on Twitter, I'm mostly pro Cubs for the most part, so that's where you'll find that. And yeah.
Just to jump in real quick, just because I had this up. So LSU drove down to the 14 and stalled. So they tried to kick a field goal. It got blocked and returned for a touchdown.
Oh, no.
and so it begins, the beginning of the end for our fairy tale conference championship day. Nate, where other than Twitter, or I guess you can let the folks listening know where they can find you at Twitter if you want them to find you, but what's your you got any links you'd like to share?
Not really.
Nope.
I mean,
he's a private man, folks. He wants you to leave him alone and just make sure
Instagram is that interesting.
Yeah, it's not. I don't suggest it. No. All kidding. Only kidding, Nate. Only kidding. You're a great follow on social media. So is the Bite Size Sports Twitter account and our Instagram and TikTok if that's your thing. I do it begrudgingly, but I know you're out there, so I make content for you. Like and subscribe if you would be so kind. You will be notified when we go live. New NBA, NFL content coming very, very soon. David, thanks so much for joining us, man. I had a blast. Nate, thank you too, but I'm used to you being here, so I'm not going to gush over you. We've known each other for too long. But David, thank you so much for being here, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a good time. This is awesome. We should do it again. I'll be happy to come analyze like the Cubs off season once that gets going in like February or March. Maybe the Daytona 500 time too.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. We want to do that for more racing content too, because that's here to stay, folks. At Bite Size Sports, you can count on more racing content, and we're going to include some more baseball. So I like that. Someone's going to need to tell me what the hell happened to the Cubs in the off season, because I'll probably be distracted with whatever it is that the Pacers seem to be doing. So if you're also a puzzled Pacers fan, follow along with us. But thanks again, everybody. We enjoyed spending time with you today, and we will see you next time.